Just watched a press conference where Joe Biden was had quite a terse exchange with reporters who were basically bringing up the issue of his age. Um, and this is going to be something that keeps coming up throughout the year because unfortunately, Joe Biden is an 81-year-old man whose age shows. And there's sort of a cruel irony because he is, in fact, one of the most experienced presidents who's ever been in the White House. Not saying one of the best, I don't think he is, but in terms of actual experience, in terms of his time in office, he's been a senator for years, he was vice president for 8 years. You'd be hard pushed to find many presidents who actually had more experience. Um, but unfortunately, this is something that is becoming more and more obvious. So, in this press conference, and it started off where he was defending the issues of his age, he was quite, you could tell he was agitated by the questions. Um, and previously, he said, "Watch me." And the reporter said, "Mr. President, we have watched you, and people are concerned." Um, well, in this press conference, he mixed up the president of Egypt with the president of Mexico. He was talking about the situation in Gaza, and he mentioned President Sisi of Mexico, except President Sisi is the president of Egypt. Now, it's not like those two countries are in the same region. Mexico's in North America, Egypt's obviously North Africa. That sort of gaffe is happening far too much with this president. And I can see why that will be, play straight into Trump's hands. Um, and I think that the Democrats probably are nervous about this because it's going to happen more and more. There's still 9, 10 months to go until the election. So it's just going to happen more and more. And yeah, it doesn't look good. I mean, here's the problem the Democrats have. If they replace Joe Biden, firstly, it'll create bitterness in the party because, there'll be a lot of egos involved. Um, Biden storming ahead, Biden Harris, they're really just wiping out any opposition in terms of the primary. So it's highly unlikely to happen. Who are the two opposition candidates? Marianne Williamson, who I think is dismissed as a bit of a conspiracy type. I wasn't overly impressed by her when she ran in 20. And Dean Phillips, who no one knows anything about. The guy is completely unknown. He might be capable. There's no obvious major flaws against him. It's just that he's unknown. And that's the problem in an election year, having a dark horse candidate, particularly against someone like Donald Trump. I mean, I suppose it could play well with the Democrats because they could say, Trump's team will have to then scatter for something to attack him on, which I'm sure they will. They always attack and lash out, but it would be a big, big risk. So it might well be that a better choice would be a more high-profile Democrat, but they're not running. People like Gavin Newsom in California and others have said that they're not going to run, probably because they know it would weaken the party. I mean, it's never a good idea for the party of a sitting president to turn against him. Um, and usually, when that has happened, another example we have was 1980 when Ted Kennedy ran against Jimmy Carter. If I've got that right, it often splits a party and only plays into the other side's hands. So I think the Democrats also know that. But I think a lot of Democrats will be nervous the more this happens. And is it simply his age, or is there something going on there? I mean, Ronald Reagan had signs of Alzheimer's even in the White House. Um, it later transpired that he was actually starting to develop that even as president. I've got the Reagan diaries, and the grammar's all over the place. Sometimes it does look like the cognitive ability isn't quite there. Now, with Joe Biden, unfortunately, it is showing more and more, and it's going to be harder to just say, I've still got it. It may well be that Biden himself faces so much pressure. I know Jill Biden she is very much for her husband running, so it won't come from her, but it may be from the party that he himself decides he's not going to run. That at some point during this campaign, he's going to suspend it or something. But that would be gold for Trump, and I don't think the Democrats will risk that. Um, Now, let me just say, For the record, I do not think Biden's a great president. But if I was an American and it was a choice between Trump and Biden, I would absolutely unequivocally go for Biden because I think Trump is so awful um, that to to put him back into the White House would just be, I think it would destroy American democracy. I really think Trump would be quite dangerous. I don't know what he would do. I think he would be vindictive and vengeful. Um, he threatened to break up NATO. I mean, that's probably hot air. He probably couldn't do it if he wanted to. But he would definitely consider suspending aid to Ukraine, which will be a present for Putin. I think Trump is shamefully appeasing of Putin. I think, how people can delude themselves that Trump in any way, shape, or form can be the leader of the free world. This man is not a leader. He's not a statesman. He's a vindictive, nasty demagogue who I think is a wannabe dictator. And it doesn't, he flip flops all the time. He'll basically say that and then say, "Oh no, I was, the media is distorting what I said." But you have to look at his own words. And what I find alarming is even when you show Trump supporters his own words, they'll still say it's a media witch hunt. So there's a real personality cult there. Um, I think Trump is the worst president of modern times because no other president, none, have stoked up conspiracy theories, have stoked up insurrectionists, like the Oath Keepers and others, in such a grotesque way. And then, after the fact, of course, he condemns violence and says he has nothing to do with it. But this is a man who will not take responsibility. This is a man who wants an economic recession just so it makes Joe Biden look bad. This is a man who, on the day of the Ukraine invasion, said it was a genius move by Putin because Trump is so ego driven that he would rather his opponent looked humiliated or weakened in some way rather than do what's best for the American people or for the free world for that matter. I think Trump is toxic. And I find it thoroughly depressing the prospect that he could get back into the White House, even despite all the legal stuff that's going on. But here's the thing, even if you want to dismiss all of that and say, oh, well, he's more astute than Biden, even that's questionable. Donald Trump recently confused Nikki Haley, his Republican opponent, with Nancy Pelosi, the former Democrat speaker. So Trump's cognitive ability really isn't much better. He just happens to be more outspoken and more bombastic in his approach, but that doesn't mean better cognitive ability. In fact, Trump is also full of gaffes. So it's a pretty bad choice. But I have to say, notwithstanding that concern about Biden, Biden at least is a Democrat. I don't mean in the party sense, I mean he believes in democracy. At least Biden hasn't railed against American institutions. At least Biden hasn't um, stoked up insurrection. Now, the Democrats, not Biden personally, but the Democratic Party doesn't have a squeaky clean record in this. During the riots in 2020, senior Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi, were fanning the flames. Um, and that's a disgrace. Democrat run cities are crime ridden. So, by no means am I giving the Democrats a green pass on this, a free pass. Their own record is far from great. But when you have a president who refuses to accept democracy, Trump is a sore loser. He refuses to accept democracy. Um, what does that say about the American political system? When the defeated candidate, throughout history, at least in modern times, every defeated candidate has conceded defeat. Now, Clinton, to be fair, she took a while to do so, but she did. Um, But every defeated candidate has conceded defeat except for Donald Trump. Donald Trump tried to interfere in the democratic process, as the transcript from Georgia shows. This is a man who I think has contempt for democracy, and I think should he get back into the White House, he will be vindictive. I don't know what form that will take, but I think he will. Now, in terms of the legal cases going on against Trump and the idea of him not being on the ballot and so on, there's two arguments there. One is that it will only victimize Trump and galvanize his supporters to say it's a witch hunt and the Democrats are trying to use the law to keep him down. But then there's another argument, and it's one I'm sympathetic to, which is why the hell should he be above the law? If Donald Trump is found to have engaged in criminal wrongdoing, if he's found to have interfered in the democratic process, and if there's significant evidence that he has, given what happened in Georgia, um, then why should he be allowed to run for office? If he's a felon, basically. So I think this is an awful choice that America's got. The last time, you have to go back to a rerun is the 1950s Adlai Stevenson versus Dwight D. Eisenhower. Um, but there was not the level of animosity then. I mean, every election has differences, and there have been a few others that have had, tensions. 2000, of course, famously ended up in the Supreme Court ruling Bush versus Gore. Now, Gore disagreed with the decision, but he did not rile up his supporters. That's the difference. Um, there was, the campaign between Clinton and Bush in 1992 was quite tense. Between Bush and Kerry in 2004, between Bush and Dukakis in 1988, they weren't tranquil. There was sometimes bitter differences, but the difference is they were statesmen, and ultimately, they didn't stoke up their supporters in the same way. I mean, George Bush and Bill Clinton ended up, if not friends, they certainly worked together on a lot of issues. Um, so that's never going to happen with Trump and Biden. But this situation is toxic, and I fear for the free world, quite frankly. Trump's taken a hard line on China. He has not taken a hard line on Russia. So that's very concerning. I think it would be a complete failure of American leadership. If Trump gets back in, if he, then carries out some of these threats, like he tries disbanding NATO or something, I'm not sure he can actually do that. But if he undermines Western institutions, and frankly, America, under his presidency, I won't say leadership, under his presidency, will lose the right to say it represents a free world. And I'm not saying any other country would gain that right, but America would no longer have that moral authority because someone like Donald Trump is just so toxic and so undemocratic, so prone to pandering to dictators, so contemptuous of the democratic process. I just think I don't know. I do not understand how intelligent people can support Trump. Now, I understand why people have concerns about Biden. I have concerns. It isn't just a cognitive thing. I think he's pandered too much to the woke left on his party. And I have a big problem with their way of thinking. I think they too, to me, someone pushing critical race theory is as divisive as someone pandering to unhinged conspiracy theories. But the American moderates need to speak out. They need to let their voice be heard on both sides. Because at the moment it seems like the extremes are taking over. Now, one of my critics recently in the whole Tucker Carlson thing pointed out the extreme left is galvanizing this. But what about the extreme right? They're both as bad as each other. Both are capable of violence. Both are showing that they, don't care about institutions or decisions that are made in the legal process. They're just going to show contempt for society, and it's becoming the rule of the mob on both sides, and it's alarming. So American moderates really, really need to speak out. I think Joe Biden needs to. Of course, he's in a difficult position. Leaving aside all the cognitive stuff, he's probably polarized a lot of his voters because of his stance on Israel and Palestine. Even though he's called for Israel to rein in on its excesses and said it's going too far and too many Palestinians have died. There are pro-Palestinian Democrats, particularly in Muslim constituencies, that frankly are furious with Biden. They think he's too pro-Israel. So Biden could lose support there. In the case of Donald Trump, there's a personality cult. So he could literally, as he said, shoot someone and they will support him. It's a personality cult. It's one thing Joe Biden doesn't have, which I think is healthy. And again, Marxism is different. Anyway, I'll wrap this up. There will no doubt be more to say, but I just wish Biden was 5 years younger because I really think he is actually an experienced politician. I think he's a statesman, but his gaffes are showing. His age is showing. He's had a difficult presidency. I don't think anyone's going to rank Joe Biden as a great president. but at least he is a Democrat. At least he hasn't stoked up insurrection against American institutions. What's the big success of his presidency? Time will tell. He did act quickly to deal with a pandemic. He did act quickly to help businesses affected by that. But that was such a big thing that I think people are also going to look at what happened in Afghanistan. They're going to look at other areas. But a lot of the things Trump attacked Biden on, it's pure hypocrisy because Donald Trump was calling for a pullout from Afghanistan. Then, of course, when it happens, he attacks Biden for it. Um, but I think, in a way, Biden's going to be another Jimmy Carter. He will be seen in history as a decent man, but not a great president. Um, Donald Trump, I think he's the worst president in modern times, and the prospect of him getting back in to me is alarming. If I was an American, I would definitely vote for Biden, if for no other reason than to keep Trump out of the White House because I think he's dangerous. In terms of Biden's cognitive ability, um, it's concerning. And his vice president, Kamala Harris, her opinion polling isn't great. So it's really not a great choice.